Hey, architecture firm owners and emerging leaders. Get ready for unparalleled insight into the development of a world-class architecture firm and a worldwide organization driving the digital transformation of the design and construction industry. With Build Smart, the podcast that's changing how our profession operates. We share the incredible stories behind innovation in the building industry with my friend and co-host, Patrick McLeamy, FAIA, former CEO of the international architecture firm, HOK.
You know, Yamasaki's office or firm lasted during his lifetime. And when he passed away, I think that was the end of the Yamasaki office. Helmut did not want that. He wanted a firm that would live out and grow beyond the founders.
In Season 1, discover the untold stories behind HOK's meteoric rise, from 150 employees in St. Louis to a powerhouse with over 1,900 staff members and 27 offices worldwide.
You know, they weren't as polite as the Kojima people. That was just boom. And anytime you have a creditor, whether it's Kojima or the bank, that wants their money, unless you can raise money someplace else, you are out of business.
Bankrupt. And hold on tight for Season 2, where Patrick takes us on a new adventure as chairman of Building Smart International, shaping the future of digital transformation in the design, construction, and operation of built assets.
Ian Howell, Ken Harold, and I, Ken was my technical representative from HOK. The three of us took a tour of Europe of 5 cities in 5 days. Very busy time.
Simply follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Smart now and uncover lessons that will transform you and your architecture firm. Hey, architecture firm owners and emerging leaders. Get ready for unparalleled insight into the development of a world-class architecture firm and a worldwide organization driving the digital transformation of the design and construction industry. With Build Smart, the podcast that's changing how our profession operates. We share the incredible stories behind innovation in the building industry with my friend and co-host, Patrick McLeamy, FAIA, former CEO of the international architecture firm, HOK.
You know, Yamasaki's office or firm lasted during his lifetime. And when he passed away, I think that was the end of the Yamasaki office. Helmut did not want that. He wanted a firm that would live out and grow beyond the founders.
In Season 1, discover the untold stories behind HOK's meteoric rise, from 150 employees in St. Louis to a powerhouse with over 1,900 staff members and 27 offices worldwide.
You know, they weren't as polite as the Kojima people. That was just boom. And anytime you have a creditor, whether it's Kojima or the bank, that wants their money, unless you can raise money someplace else, you are out of business.
Bankrupt. And hold on tight for Season 2, where Patrick takes us on a new adventure as chairman of Building Smart International, shaping the future of digital transformation in the design, construction, and operation of built assets.
Ian Howell, Ken Harold, and I, Ken was my technical representative from HOK. The three of us took a tour of Europe of 5 cities in 5 days. Very busy time.
Simply follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Smart now and uncover lessons that will transform you and your architecture firm. Welcome back to the EntreArchitect podcast. My name is Mark Arlepage, and today I'm excited to bring you something very special. It's a Best of 2024 episode. As we take a short break to prepare fresh, new, inspiring content for you, we're diving into one of your all-time favorite episodes from this past year. This conversation, chosen based on your listener feedback and our analytics, it truly highlights the insights and strategies that have resonated most with our community of small firm architects. Whether you're listening here for the first time or revisiting this conversation, I know that you're going to walk away with ideas that you can apply to your practice today, right now. We'll be back in February with a brand new season of episodes packed with actionable advice, expert interviews, and the tools that you need to thrive in 2025. But until then, this is the perfect time to reflect recharge, and get inspired for what's next. Thank you for being part of this growing community of architects. It's your commitment to building better businesses that keeps me moving forward. So thank you. Now enjoy this best of 2024 episode, and let's make 2025 our best year yet. My name is Mark R. LePage, and you are listening to EntreArchitect Podcast, where each week I speak with inspiring, passionate people who share their knowledge and expertise, all to help you build a better business as a small firm entrepreneur architect. Growing up with an architect father, Julie Flattery understood early on the profound impact our spaces have on our emotions and well-being. This passion for architecture, combined with her love for words, has driven her 30-year career in marketing and PR. As the owner of Julie Flattery Company, she provides comprehensive marketing, PR, and business development services to AEC firms. Julie is also the co-founder of Deconstructed Workshops, where she teaches architects, engineers, and contractors the art of crafting winning proposals through both online and live workshops. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about proposals and storytelling and marketing and all the things that will help you get more work. Julie Flattery, welcome to EntreArchitect Podcast.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate you having me here today. I'm excited to talk to your audience. It's a great audience for me as well. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I love storytelling. I love helping architects get more work. And so that's going to be a great conversation for me. Before we do that, I want to learn more about you, Julie. When did you discover your passion for what you do today, and who or what inspired you to get started?
I love this question. So believe it or not, my passion started when I was around 6. And I grew up with an architect father. And so I did grow up in that sort of more of a creative and thoughtfully produced environment. So I was used to that, as a kid. But the thing was, the story I want to tell you is actually that my mom, she sewed, and she used to ask me to go to the fabric store with her. And this was when, like I said, when I was around 6, and I would tell her I didn't want to go because it made me sad. And she couldn't understand it. And I didn't really understand it myself. I just knew that I didn't like being in that space. And even though it had beautiful fabric in it, the store itself was in a basement, and it was dingy, and there was no daylight. There were fluorescent lights hanging from wires, and the walls were yellowed, and it was just really unpleasant. And it took me a long time before I figured out why it made me sad, before I could actually articulate, it was the space itself. It impacted how I felt. So I don't remember exactly how old I was when I finally figured it out. But, from the fabric store on, I started realizing that there were certain places that I would be in that just made me really unhappy. So I suppose I'm ultra sensitive to my environment. And so it was important to me just growing up that I make my space as pretty as possible. My bedroom always needed to be like that, and everything around me needed to be like that. So one day, a friend of mine actually called me up. I was studying English and journalism, and she said, there's this architecture firm in Westwood Village called BTA, and they're hiring right now, and they need someone to help out in their business office. And, I needed to get a job. And she said, why don't you go and talk to them? So I walked in, and I felt like I was home, just everything about it. And I remember telling my dad, it even smells like our house. There's just something about it. I was just
The
like,
ammonia.
the pencils,
Yeah.
lead, just all of it. I just knew I had to work there. So I started off in their business department, like I said. And the thing is, I was surrounded by really inspiring people. This firm, BTA, it's also known as Barbaro Thomas and Associates, and it hasn't been around for quite some time, unfortunately, but it was big, and it was full of really talented people. One of the principals was Jack McAllister, who actually worked with Louis Kahn. He was, I think, the lead designer for the Salk Institute. Full of people like that who are very, very inspiring, and also really kind and generous with their time, and, really generous to me, because I think at that time I was maybe the youngest person in the firm. I was around 21, 22, something like that. So because I did write and I loved writing, their marketing department started pulling me in to help out with proposals. And I was doing very simple things like writing bios and that sort of thing. But yeah, I started helping out with that, and one thing led to another, and now here I am sitting here talking to you like I'm some kind of expert.
So, how did you get from the architecture studio writing bios to the Julie Flattery Company?
Oh, yeah. That was a long process. I mean, I did work for many, many years in house for firms, and I was a marketing director. My last in house position was marketing director for a large firm that had offices in both Seattle and Portland. I was responsible for both offices. I was a senior associate at the firm. I actually helped start the Portland office. So when we opened that office, there were two of us. And by the time I left, there were 25. That was about 7 years later. So I was working in that role, and I had been doing it for a really long time, marketing director positions. And my mom actually was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and she was living in Dallas at the time and living on her own. And I decided I had been thinking about doing something on my own and already and making a change. I was just sort of ready to do something different. So when the diagnosis came up, I knew that I wanted to go try to help her navigate through that process. And I was living in Portland, so I put all my things in storage and I moved out there and I lived with her for 2 years until she passed away, which was 2.5 years ago. So during that time, I had actually lived up Bellingham, Washington for a long time and worked for an architecture firm there, RMC Architects. And they called me and they said, "We hear you're out on the streets and we need you." So I thought, I should freelance while I'm here. It was the pandemic. We were housebound. My mom was sick. I couldn't go very many places, because I had to keep her safe during that time. So I started freelancing for them. And then, other people heard that I was doing it and started calling me. And so the next thing I knew, I was helping people redo their proposals and with their marketing. RMC actually has me, they're a smaller firm, like probably a lot of your listeners, they are around 19 people. And they actually do a retainer agreement with me. So it was a way for them to have a marketing director without having to marketing director salary. And so I help them with everything, strategic planning. We have strategic planning groups we do, and they're just an amazingly talented, robust firm, for a firm their size in a small community and doing some really amazing work. So, I just had started doing things like that for all these different firms, and I was helping out a lot with proposal redos. People were sending me their proposals and they were saying, we're not getting any work. Can you tell us why? And so this is sort of what started driving this idea of creating these workshops for Deconstructed. When I would help people, they would say, "You should teach this. Nobody knows this." And it hadn't occurred to me. I thought, doesn't everyone know this? But then I realized this is an accumulation of experience for 30 years. Of course, I'm going to know things that other people who are just coming into marketing or, that principals who are busy doing other jobs and don't really have time to do proposals, but have to do them anyway. They might not always know that there are better ways and easier ways of doing things. So from that freelance, which I still do for the Julie Flattery Company, I ended up starting Deconstructed Workshops with Claire Schatzel. And Claire and I were working together on projects for RMC, the Bellingham firm. And we started collaborating on a few other projects. And I said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing these workshops with me?" And she said, "Yes, yes, yes." So she does a graphic design session, and she also chimes in on a couple of other sessions that I do. And so we created this series of 5 workshops that pretty much cover the gamut of proposals, starting with client relationships to, the end, and then everything in between. Like, I threw in things about thinking outside the box. And because, sometimes I think we have to do that when we're responding to proposals. We're going after work we don't have experience with, or we don't have a lot of experience with. So how do you tackle those kinds of things when you don't have all the goods to show? So that's how it all came about. And like I said, here I am talking to you now.
Yeah. What a great story. If you want to learn more about Deconstructed Workshops, the website is deconstructedworkshops.com. You can go there and check everything out there. So we're talking to small firms, Julie, right? Lots of sole practitioners, lots of small firm business owners. They are busy people and they're all trying to get work, right? And a lot of them are putting together proposals and they're not getting the job. So let's start with the beginning. I mean, if they're competing against multiple other firms, how do you use this proposal to set yourself apart and get noticed?
That's a great question. And I think that small firms are just as capable of responding thoughtfully and well in proposals as any other firm. I think you have the goods, you just may not know exactly how to use them. So earlier today, I was reviewing one of our sessions, and there was a slide that I have called Write the Design Story of Your Project as Soon as the Project Completes. And it occurred to me when I saw this, it was something that I hadn't summed up before for everybody, that there's a lot of proactivity that can be involved to make the proposal process much easier on you when you're a small firm and you don't have marketing people. And I think that's one of them, is creating some things in advance that you can pull from in order to tailor your proposal to an RFP or an RFQ. And I think that the desire to use boilerplate information over and over again can be pretty attractive, But the thing is, they know, the selection committees know. I wrote an article actually for the Seattle DJC, and the Oregon DJC picked it up as well. And you can find a link to it on our homepage of our website. But I interviewed selection committee members, 3 different selection committee members from public entities. And it's a worthwhile read, not because I wrote it, but because the information they gave me was so incredible. And I got tons of mail, from it, just people writing to me saying, thank you for writing that article. I didn't know. And one of the things they talk about is that they can spot boilerplate information from miles and miles away, and they don't like it. So if you have a design story and you write it thoroughly, or you have someone help you write it thoroughly from start to finish, when the project completes, while everything's fresh in your mind and you've got all those details, there's so many things that we're asked to talk about in proposals, like if you have construction on an occupied site, or if you had to be part of a community process, what were the ins and outs of those things? What were your challenges and how did you mitigate those challenges? So there's so many things like that you forget along the way. And so doing it right up front, not only do you have all the bits that are really important, but you also have a place that you can pull information from for your proposal. So when you get to the proposal, say you've written a design story for a historic building, and it's also got a new building on the same campus, and it's got to look contextual and not overshine the historic building, and everything needs to work together. So you've written about all of that, and you're going after a project that has that same criteria. You can tailor your project sheet just like that, because you've got all the information there. You pull it out from your design story, you stick it on a project sheet, and there you go, So that's just one way that I think smaller firms can tackle this in a much more easy way and set themselves apart. Because like we were talking about earlier, setting yourself apart, Mark, you mentioned stories. That's what I tell everyone. What we're doing is we're telling stories. We're not giving mundane details in proposals. We're not saying this was a 3,000 square foot project that had 25 users and sat on a campus. That's fine. But that's not what's interesting. What we want to know is, how did you approach it? What systems do you have that you've created to make the process more efficient? How did you consider the users? How did you consider the site and where it sits in the neighborhood? Those are the stories that you tell that make you sound different from everyone else. Because believe me, I've read more proposals than I can tell you. And most of them will say the first thing I said, the mundane thing. They will just, in a very bland way, describe a process or describe what a person does without really getting to the nuggets. And that's why we called our workshop Deconstructed, because I think what we're doing here is we're deconstructing a very mundane sentence down to the core of why it's important. What's really important about what you're saying. And that way, you're telling a story about your firm and setting your firm apart.
Yeah, I love that. You have 2 big takeaways there. First of all, the storytelling, right? The proposal should be about a story, should be about the people and about the project, specifically in the consequences that you had and the successes that you had and the overcoming the challenges that you had. All of that is something that somebody's going to be interested in. And I love, Julie, the tip to write the design story of the project at the end of the project, right? Make it part of your workflow. Make it part of your design process that when you're finished with the project, the final phase is putting together all of the information about the project and why it worked and how it worked. And so it's there and you're ready to pull. And when you're all excited about it, right? You just came back from the opening ceremonies and everybody's happy and your client's happy. And now you have this opportunity to tell that story, write it down. And then next time you need that, you're not crafting it 6 months later when you're trying to get another proposal. Now, what was that story? I don't remember exactly what happened. So I'm going to make something up, and it's never going to be as passionate as it was when you first finished the project. So that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I love what you said too about the project opening, like the groundbreaking or the project opening. Actually, the project opening I'm going to talk about right now. What was the user experience when those doors of a brand new building?
Right.
I remember writing something about that, a school that had been in such disrepair. And once it was completed, they had this beautiful new design, and the kids just they were beside themselves when they walked in the door of this new school. So, those are stories too. And it doesn't hurt to interview people about those kinds of things. Kids, talk to the kids. I've done that a million times. Tell me about this building. What did it do for you? Learning is more fun. They'll tell you stories like that. So those are also can be part of your proposal. And that's what they want to hear. In that same interview I spoke of for the DJC, passion was what people talked about. This one woman, Libby Ramirez from Oregon State University, said, when someone tells me they've been waiting for this RFP to come out for years so they could work on this project, that's the kind of thing I want to hear.
Yeah. And that comes through in that writing when you do it immediately after the project has been completed. I love the idea of having an archive of content that you can pull from. Every project adds more content to your archive. And so every time you write a new proposal, every time you finish a project, proposal writing gets easier because you have more to pull from. You're either not creating every proposal from scratch or just using the same boilerplate proposal that you've used the last 20 times and haven't gotten the projects.
That's true. And it's not just your project examples. These things can be incorporated in your project approach. Sometimes you might want to talk about, well, for this project, it's a lot like yours. We implemented this whole quality control system that made it so much more efficient. We had much less change orders, So you put that in your project approach. You go, what was that project? Oh, yeah, we did that. Okay, I'm going to pull that out and I'm going to stick it in here. So it can work double and triple and quadruple duty throughout your proposal.
Let's take a quick break to say thank you to our sponsors for their support of this episode. Architects, listen up. Is something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Regardless if you have a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you're just a human who lives in this world and is going through a hard time, therapy can give you the tools to approach your life in a very different way. I know this community of small firm architects very well, and I see many of you struggling. That's why I reached out to this episode's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it's online, it's remote. And by filling out just a few questions, BetterHelp can match you with a professional therapist in as little as a few days. It's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. There's a link in the show notes. It's betterhelp.com/architect. Just use that link, betterhelp.com/architect. Clicking that link helps support this podcast, but it also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp. So you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. If you need someone to talk to, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click the link in the show notes or visit betterhelp.com/architect. That's betterhelp.com/architect. Thank you to BetterHelp for supporting this podcast and for supporting our community of small firm architects. ARCAT's Spec Wizard is the tool that will help you save time writing specifications. Going through the manufacturer's specification line by line to find the right product leads to frustration and errors. And that's where Spec Wizard comes in. It's a free, patented tool that allows you to select products and options error-free and generate a 3-part specification in minutes. Go to arcat.com, that's ARCAT.com, and try Spec Wizard today. Please visit our sponsors today and thank them. Thank them for supporting you, the EntreArchitect community. Julie, do you have any other suggestions in terms of getting it done, right? The efficiency of it, the process of putting together a proposal?
Yeah, well, I think the writing part is so daunting for so many people. And we don't all feel like we're good writers. And so it tends to be the thing that gets put off. And then in addition, when you're a smaller firm and you're trying to bill your time and you also have to write, these things can drag your proposal out to being done at the last minute, and then it's never as good and it leaves too much room for error. And I think it can be more difficult for small firms if they don't have any marketing staff to get this writing done. But first of all, I think you're always going to have a couple of good writers in your firm that work on proposals. There's always going to be somebody. That's why you're making them do it. So I like to interview people. I take as much off the plate of people as possible when I do a proposal. And I think whoever's in charge, if they can do that so that things don't get put off to the last minute. Like, for example, sub-consultants, that's a big one. I found over the years that I had a lot of difficulty getting the right information I needed from sub-consultants. And oftentimes it was just that they were also small firms and didn't have writers and didn't have marketing departments. So I'm not slamming on sub-consultants here. I'm just using it as an example. But you need the same relevant information you're putting in a proposal for your own team. You need that same thing from sub-consultants. And I think a lot of people just take whatever is given to them from a sub-consultant and put it in because they don't have the time. Right. So I created something I call a sub-consultant request form. And I created this about, 15, 20 years ago because I got so tired of not getting what I needed. And it's very specific about what I need. And it's also written in the format of how I need it. So if I just need a resume, it's written in the format of that resume in InDesign, if you're hopefully working in InDesign. So it can be cut and paste directly into the proposal. I don't have to do anything. I just have to proof it. And I'm very specific about what I need from them in terms of their bio. This is what the project is about. It's about a new medical facility that also has a teaching facility, and they also have an emergency services requirement. These are the kinds of things that the proposal is asking for. This is what I want you to talk about. And you can't be too specific. So then you get what you need when you need it. I do a quick turnarounds. If a sub-consultant just needs to give me one resume, then I give them a couple of days to do it. That way I have plenty of time if I need to rewrite or go back and get more information. And then it's done. All your subs are done and you can just move on to the rest of the proposal. So I also like to record interviews. If I'm going to write for somebody, if I'm going to write a bio for one of the architects on the team, I just sit down and talk to them. I ask the questions. Why do you want to work on this project? That's a big one. Tell me, what do you bring to this project that's different from everyone else that may be going after it? You've done 25 of these. That's great. But why is it great? What did you do? And I record those interviews, and I have this program that you can get. It's very inexpensive and called Otter AI. And I dump it in there. It transcribes it. I go through, I highlight what's most important in that. I create in that interview. I create a little bio for them. I run it by them, and we're done. So things like that, thinking about how you can, if you're responsible for the proposal, what you can do to take things away from people who are just don't have the skills and qualifications or the time to do it, and pitching in wherever you can makes the process so much smoother.
You mentioned Adobe InDesign and Otter AI. Do you have any other tools that architects could be looking at in order to help us do what we do? Or are those the two main that you use?
I'm trying to think back. So in our workshops, we have so many resources. We've got things for, I'm not going to remember all the websites, but I can look these up for people. I like to use icons as a way of conveying information. So on a project sheet, if a proposal has 5 main criteria, then I like to use icons that reflect those. And there's a key that goes with it. So they know, okay, this is LEED certified. This is construction on an occupied site. This is historic preservation. These icons mean these things. And then when I create a project sheet, I put the icons on the project sheet that apply, to their project. So that at a glance, they don't even have to read the whole sheet. They can go, look, I have 5 criteria. This project has all 5. That's brilliant. So we've got a resource for icons. We've got resources for stock photography. Yeah, there's a lot out there that I think could help. So yeah, let me know if I can find these for you. And we're doing a webinar, so it'll be on.
Yeah, exactly. Julie's coming to EntreArchitect Network and is going to be doing a webinar for us inside the network. So you can learn more about proposals there as well. I love the icons. The icons sort of very easily, quickly identify the different projects. How important is the design of the proposal, right? Because you could put together a proposal and it's just all black and white text, a couple of pictures here and there. How much does the design of the overall proposal impact the evaluators?
The design is really important. The design doesn't need to be fancy, but it is important. When I interviewed people, the organization of a proposal was very key in how they perceived the information that they were getting from you. Following the RFP, if the RFP lists the proposal criteria in a certain order, numbering it in the same order and listing it that way. And that may sound obvious to a lot of people, but believe me, I've read proposals where I go, well, why are the resumes in section 12 when they have it here in the RFP in section 3? So it does happen that people don't follow the order. Yeah. So the organization is very important. One of the people I interviewed told me she sometimes has 25 tabs open for she's reviewing. So imagine, that's what I like to tell people, put yourself in their place. What would you want to see? Would you want a bunch of pages with nothing but text? I would go crazy. And I think we all would. So a well-designed proposal can be simply done by having a nice font. And fonts are very important. They need to be readable. Claire goes over this in her session. We've got a lot of issues now with font sizes and people who have issues with sight, being able to see. There's certain colors that people find hard to read. So, picking a nice font doesn't have to be huge, but just a readable size. I like 10.5 fonts. Having 2 columns is very important. That's why magazines and newspapers are organized in columns for a certain way. It's easier on the eye. And trying to have some sort of visual on every page if possible, or at least on every other page. So you can use photos, of course, project photos that are relevant, and everything should be relevant in a proposal. Don't just go, well, this project was pretty, so I'm going to put it in here so they see what a great designer I am. If it doesn't have anything to do with their project, don't put it in there. So photos that are relevant, you can do, if you don't have a lot of relevant photos, if you've got some nice renderings, some nice site plans and diagrams that maybe show how light, impacts a particular project design, things like that. This is when I'm talking about thinking outside the box. This is one of the ways that I think we think outside the box. We come up with ways that we can have visuals that break up the monotony of just reading a bunch of text and incorporate that into the design. But consistency is one of my biggest things. I see proposals where one page has a huge photo at the bottom and just a little bit of text, and the page next to it has long columns of text with couple of small photos at the bottom. That's not consistent. So just making it organized and consistent with some visuals is, I think, extremely important. And it creates a much better impression. Consistency, I want to add to that for a second. Consistency is also in the writing. So if you are using the Oxford, or some people call it serial comma, if you use it once, use it everywhere. Don't use it in some paragraphs and not in the other. If you are capitalizing SF for square foot, then don't on the next page spell it out or use lowercase. Come up with style guides so that everything in the proposal is consistent, because it does send, I think, a subconscious message to the reader of those proposals of disorganization when you don't do that.
Yeah, the proposal is their first impression, right? It's you walking through their office. That's the first thought they have. And so you need to, first of all, capture their attention, and then you need to be consistent, and a well-designed proposal is going to show them who you are and how you work. When I had my first job 30 something years ago to get my first architecture job, rather than putting together a resume that was just a one sheet resume that looked like everybody else's resume, I designed a brochure for Mark LePage. And I had some of my architecture projects on them and my name on them. And it looked like it was a sales brochure for Mark LePage. And it was during the recession in the early 90s, and nobody was hiring. But I got a job. And my employer told me later that I got the job because I was the one that at first he didn't hire anybody for the project that he was looking at. But months later, he needed somebody and he remembered my resume and went right back to the resume and hired me. And that's a much longer story that ended up with my entire family coming from the firm that I got the job in, because I met my wife, who I married, from that firm. So that resume was a very important resume in the story of my life. And so getting noticed is a critical piece. It is the most important piece, really, because you need to get noticed in order for them to see the rest of what your proposal says.
That's exactly right. And I love your story. That's such a perfect story. And one resume / brochure changed your entire life in every way you could possibly imagine.
Exactly. 3 kids, a wife, dogs and cat, all of it came from the resume, for sure. That employer, who is a good friend today, takes full credit for my entire life.
Yeah, I think that the point is well taken. You never know what happens when you put something innovative together like that, how it can completely change the trajectory of your whole firm. So, yeah, great.
Being intentional, being proactive, thinking about how you're going to put together proposals later before the time comes, very, very important. Some great tips there, some great strategies. Julie, before we wrap things up, I would love your thoughts on what's the one thing that architects, we talked about lots of things today. What's the one thing that an architect can do today to build a better business for tomorrow?
My philosophies, I think we covered pretty well, but I think this idea of taking the burden off of yourself by waiting too long to get everything done is huge. And, I talked about it in terms of a design story, but there's another component. And I don't know how many of you who are listening are able to hire photographers and do photo shoots and that sort of thing. Hopefully you're able to get to do some of that, so you've got professional photos for your proposals. But this is just another little piece in this whole idea of being more proactive, which I think will just add so many years to your life for not stressing out and trying to get a proposal done. Think of the stories that you want to tell. And this is true not just for proposals, but it's true for your website. It's true for all your marketing materials. It's so true for award submittals. What is the story that you want to tell about this project? So it's complete, and you're saying, this has a design that I think is worthy of not only bringing in other work, but getting an award. And so what awards are you going after, and what is that criteria? What jobs are you going after, and what is that criteria? If it's a K-12 school, I worked for architects that did K-12 for many, many years. And so I use that as an example a lot. But if it's a K-12 school, one of the biggest issues these days is transparency. So it's safety and security. Right. So if you're going to be telling that story, and if that's an important component to, say, getting an award from an educational organization for your project, because awards for architecture are great, but when they're given to you by your clients, those are the best kinds of awards to win. And so when you're thinking about transparency and you're planning your photo shoot, how do you convey that so that you can tell a story that has a photo that goes with that story and demonstrate to your clients how you achieve transparency? And I've set up photo shoots where we've had kids in a group learning space, in the middle of classrooms, there's a group learning space, and they get free time there and they can study and gather and work on projects. But they don't not necessarily all have supervision. So that space looks out into the admin building, which is right next to it, or the admin space, which is right in front of it. And that's full of transparency. And that space looks out into the entry of the school, which is also very transparent. So you organize your shoot with people in every space, and you take photos that show, wow, I can see straight through these 3 different areas of this school, and it looks really safe to me. So, thinking about those things in advance even when you're creating a proposal, sit down with your team and say, how are we going to get this job? What stories are we going to tell that's going to set us apart from everybody else? You usually have a sense of who else is going after the same jobs as you. So what do you do that's different? And then you've planned your photo shoot, you've planned your design story, you have all of those things together, and you assemble all your materials into one beautiful package.
Her name is Julie Flattery. Julie Flattery Company is the name of her firm. Deconstructive Workshops are the workshops, Deconstructed Workshops. Deconstructedworkshops.com is where you can learn more about the workshops. Go check that out. Julie also has a free tips and tricks booklet that you can download. Just go to deconstructedworkshops.com, scroll down halfway down the page there, and click the link, and you get a free download of more tips and tricks. We had lots of tips and tricks today. So Julie, thank you for sharing all of this valuable information today about proposals, about storytelling, about marketing, and getting noticed in how we do what we do as architects. Thank you for being here today and sharing your knowledge at EntreArchitect Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Mark. It's been a pleasure. I love talking about this and sharing what I know.
If you liked this episode of EntreArchitect Podcast, please share a link to this episode with a friend. Either just click the share button or highlight the URL and send the link to this episode with a friend, because that's how EntreArchitect has grown to serve thousands more architects just like you throughout the 10 plus years of EntreArchitect. That's how we've grown, architect to architect. So I would love for you to share this episode and all the episodes with one friend every week. We'd love that. And thank you to our sponsors for this episode. We don't have an episode if there's no sponsors. So thank you to our sponsors. Links to those sponsors, which you should go visit and click, and all the resources that we discussed today for this specific episode, they are all available at entrearchitect.com/podcast. Every episode that we've recorded is there, entrearchitect.com/podcast. Go click the links to the sponsors and say hello. EntreArchitect is a member of the Gable Media Podcast Network. You should go visit that at gablemedia.com. That is the next evolution of interactive media and resources for the AEC community. You can now earn continuing education credits for listening to select episodes of this podcast, EntreArchitect Podcast. Yes, AIA CEUs for listening to a podcast. It's there, and many other podcasts are there as well, and you can listen to all of them and get credit. Learn more about our program, Gable Members Program, at the gablemedia.com/members website. That's GABL media.com/members. And if you are a small firm architect, join us today at EntreArchitect Network. That is the worldwide organization for small firm entrepreneur architects. If you own your own architecture firm, you are an entrepreneur architect. You are an EntreArchitect. With weekly live group business coaching, we have business coaching there, monthly live business training with AIA CEUs, 2 a month, so 24 AIA credits per year, including 12 of those are HSWs. We have them in the membership. Business resources, all the resources you need to run your business, special session webinars, mastermind groups, and a thriving community of small firm architects just like you. Hundreds of architects are there waiting for you to join. So we provide the support and encouragement you need to succeed as a small firm architect. I know that you haven't been trained as a business person when you launched your firm. That's what we do. Come learn how to run a business at EntreArchitect Network. And today you can go join right now for free for 30 days at this link. entrearchitect.com/30 days will give you free 30 days for membership. Go check it out at entrearchitect.com/30 days, and I will see you there. Thank you for listening to this episode of EntreArchitect Podcast. My name is Mark R. LePage, and I want you to remember 3 words: love, learn, share. Have a great day.
Imagine earning continuing education credits while doing exactly what you're doing right now. Well, you can. Gable Media has revolutionized the way you earn your continuing education credits with a groundbreaking approach. Forget running around town and scouring the internet for credit-worthy courses. Fulfill your CE requirements effortlessly by listening to engaging podcasts just like the one you're listening to now. Our podcasts are designed to educate, entertain, and inspire, all in a user-friendly environment. But wait, there's more. Architects, Gable Media is also approved as an AIA continuing education services provider. Upon completion, we handle everything, from reporting your hours directly to the AIA to storing your certificates in your personal Gable Media profile for your self-reporting needs. So follow the link in the show notes and start earning your credits in the most innovative and entertaining way possible with Gable Media.
Attention architects and creative minds, get ready to supercharge your brand with Build Your Brand, the podcast that's unlocking the secrets of branding success for creatives. Hey there, it's Mark Arlepage, founder of EntreArchitect, and I'm inviting you to join my friend, architect marketing expert Jeff Eccles at Build Your Brand podcast, where he explores the captivating stories of the world's top brands and transforms their lessons into powerful moves for small firm architects and creatives like you. In Season 1, Jeff shares the thrilling tale of Southwest Airlines, where he dissects their journey to the summit and distills it into strategies tailor-made for you.
It's important to keep in mind that companies like Southwest compete in the real world, just like you, and face real-world challenges, just like you. You might be surprised at how similar those challenges are to the struggles that you grapple with on a day-to-day basis.
Don't miss out on your blueprint for success. Subscribe, tune in, and let's build your brand together.
You may have noticed that the very best brands in the world are also known for having somewhat unique corporate cultures. That's often the glue that holds everything together when they encounter those rough spots.
We don't do it because it inconveniences the passengers to whom we are primarily dedicated, the short haul, frequent flyer.
Follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Your Brand today. Remember, no matter the size, the journey's the same. Your brand's journey to the top starts here.